There are stories that hide themselves in the dark, not because history forgot them, but because someone wanted them buried. Jack the Ripper is one of them. For over a century, his identity has been debated, dissected, speculated into oblivion. Suspects were named, diaries forged, letters mocked and magnified. But among the thousands of pages, hundreds of theories, and decades of retellings, there's one piece of evidence that historians mention quietly, carefully, almost fearfully. A sealed report. An investigation that never made its way into the official record, witness testimony collected but never released. A horror that was never revealed. Tonight, we open it, and this is the case file that should have changed everything. Fog swallowed Whitechapel that night as if the streets themselves didn't want to remember. Lanterns flickered against the wind, horse hooves echoed in the distance, and every alleyway felt like a throat holding its breath. Mary Jane Kelly lived at 13 Miller's Court, a tiny room behind a narrow passage. She was the Ripper's final victim, but what the public didn't know is that she wasn't alone that night. The sealed witness report begins with the testimony of Thomas Bowyer, the man who found her. But the report you've heard is incomplete. The real one, the one kept in the restricted archives, says something else. I heard two voices in the room. One was Mary's. The other, I did not know that it was low, like a man speaking through a cracked door. But the words were not English. He didn't describe drunken slurs, slurred commands, or threats. He described a cadence, a rhythm, as if the stranger wasn't talking to Mary, but chanting. Bowyer's statement continues. I knocked on the window, thinking she'd owe rent again. The chanting stopped, and something inside the room moved toward the door. Not footsteps, something brushing the floorboards. This part of the testimony was marked redacted, sensational, and impossible. The police commissioner removed it before the case became public. Bowyer never spoke of it again. Most people know the infamous letters allegedly sent by Jack the Ripper. Dear Boss, Saucy Jackie. From hell, some were hoaxes. Some were written by journalists seeking fame. But one letter was found decades later, sealed inside a police ledger, marked only by a faded number. It wasn't signed, it wasn't taunting, it wasn't written in the same mocking tone. It read like a warning. The handwriting analysis from the sealed report stated, the individual writes as if the hand is unfamiliar with its own movements, like a person writing while half-conscious. The letter said, do not look for the man. There is no man, that he comes through cracks you cannot see. He wore me like a coat. Historians ignored it. Handwriting experts dismissed it as nonsense. But in the margin, an investigator had scribbled, subject claims to experience missing time. Says the voice in his head speaks in languages he does not know. It raises one question the archives were never willing to publish. What if Jack the Ripper didn't act alone? What if he wasn't even the one in control? This part of the case was suppressed entirely. One woman survived a Ripper attack, or at least that's what the sealed testimony implies. Her name appears only once in official records. Eliza Liddell, age 29, she was admitted to the Whitechapel Infirmary 3 weeks after Mary Kelly's murder. Her body covered in shallow cuts, the same pattern, the same method, but unfinished. The attending nurse wrote, patient insists she saw the killer's face. Not clearly, not directly, but reflected. When questioned, Eliza said, the face was wrong, not deformed, rearranged. She described the killer as tall, but not too tall, wearing a long coat, moving strangely, as if his arms didn't know how to swing naturally, and worst of all, he smiled with someone else's mouth. When investigators pressed her, she added, he spoke without opening his lips. Eliza was deemed unstable, placed in a sanitarium, and died there decades later. Her file was hidden. But one phrase she repeated over and over appears in the report. It wasn't a man, that it was a shadow wearing a man. The sealed case includes a forgotten coroner's note from Dr. Thomas Bond. Bond's public reports on the Ripper murders are clinical, detached, focused on anatomy, but the private autopsy notes, withheld from the public, include one line crossed out heavily with ink. Incisions exhibit hesitation not consistent with human intent. Rather, they appear exploratory, as though done by something encountering anatomy for the first time. Another note: damage to the organs is not consistent with a knife alone. Tissue tearing suggests tool of unknown type or serration. And the last one, scribbled as if the coroner didn't want to write it: presence of fine black residue inside the wound cavities, similar to soot or ASH, an unknown cause. This detail repeats across several victims, but the residue was quietly removed from official police evidence. Samples stored in jars vanished, and Dr. Bond himself took his life 2 years after his report. His final diary entry, also suppressed: "I have seen the eyes. They do not blink." One of the most disturbing statements came from a night watchman who patrolled near Mitre Square, the site of Catherine Eddowes' murder. His testimony begins like a normal witness account. Fog was thick, visibility poor. Heard something like a cough or whisper, but then saw a man standing completely still near the wall. At first I thought he was relieving himself, but he did not move. Even as I approached, he stood frozen. Frozen. Not as in afraid, frozen as if someone pressed pause on his body. The watchman said. He turned his head unnaturally slow, not like a drunk, like a hinge bending the wrong way. He ran, but before he escaped down the alley, he heard something else. The man's shadow moved after me, but the man did not. This testimony was labeled delirium and dismissed. But the watchman died 3 days later from unexplained internal bleeding and no wounds. No marks. Just hollow as if something had drained him without breaking the skin. The last document in the sealed archive is not a testimony, not a letter, not an autopsy. It is a single page. A photograph. Blurred. Nighttime. Taken with a large box camera. Slow exposure. Long shutter. It shows a man in a long coat, standing at the end of an alley. But the disturbing part isn't the man. It's the shape behind him, a tall, distorted silhouette, no face, no clear form, just a smudge darker than shadow, reaching one arm over the man's shoulder like a puppeteer's hand. On the back of the photo, an investigator wrote, "Do not reveal that if the public sees this, panic will follow. Whatever this is, it is not human. This is the horror that was never revealed. This is why the case stayed unsolved. This is why no man could be definitively accused. Because maybe there was no man. Maybe Jack the Ripper was just a body used like a tool. A vessel. A mask." London authorities publicly ended the Ripper investigation. But internally, in a secret memo, they issued a very different command: do not pursue further. This is not a matter for police. This is a matter for containment. The memo has no signature. Half the pages are missing. But the last sentence is intact. The entity has vanished from Whitechapel. Pray it does not find another host. After 1888, the murders stopped. Not because Jack the Ripper was caught, but because something else left Whitechapel. Was it still alive? Still searching? Still moving through the cracks no one sees? History never answered. And maybe it did, just somewhere else, through someone else. People always wondered why Jack the Ripper was never identified, why the letters contradicted each other, why witnesses described different men, why the killings stopped so suddenly. But the sealed case file suggests one chilling possibility. There was never one killer, just one presence, moving between bodies, learning, practicing, experimenting, and when it was done, when it understood the human form well enough, it left. The final line in the sealed report is written in shaking handwriting. Whatever it was, it only used Jack as its hands. And now that it knows ours, it will wear another pair. The file closes here, and history pretends none of it existed. But the fog in Whitechapel still rises on cold nights. Windows still frost from the inside. Shadows still stretch where no lantern burns, and sometimes, if you walk alone down Buck's Row or Miller's Court, you'll hear something behind you. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a whisper that sounds almost human. Almost.